Thank you, Chairman. Dr. Richardson, thank you for your testimony and your leadership. Ms. Duke, thank you for your testimony and leadership as well, and for your service to our country, and to all the veterans that have joined us here today and those watching for your service to our country as well. I'm, too, like my colleague, a healthcare practitioner. I'm an occupational therapist. I'm happy to hear you just mention occupational therapy is under your purview. I'm the son of a nurse, a grandson of a nurse, and the son of a father who received life-saving medical treatment at the VA hospital in Buffalo when I was a young boy in the early 1980s. So obviously it's very personal for me and my family, as it's personal for all families across our country, the work that you're doing. That's why it's so important, your testimony here today, and how we can work to get it right. I want to go back to what one of my colleagues brought up in the $12 billion fund for new hiring. My colleague mentioned new hires, and I think, Ms. Duke, this is for you. My colleague brought up new hires coming in at 5,000, potentially 17,000. The question I have, because of the data that I've seen, is that there's actually been a decrease in employees across the system since the PACT Act was put in place. Is that accurate? Has there been a net increase or decrease in employment across the board at the VA?
So the short answer is there has been an increase when we expected it to be a decrease, and that is why we are communicating the need for additional resources. We had expected coming into 2024, because we had been so successful hiring up last year, that we would be able to keep FTE coming down and still continue to provide the same quality of care. And what we've seen from our front lines is that that was not feasible. And so because we never had a hiring freeze, we now see our staffing going up. The 5,000 is what we are anticipating net across the system growing in 2025, which again is just to enable our field to continue to bring on what's necessary.
But what I'm asking is not forward-looking, but to this point. Since the PACT Act was passed, has there been an increase or decrease in employment across the system?
Increase.
There has been an increase. So those 5,000 new hires you mentioned have already been hired, or 17,000 have already been hired?
They have not, but we were able to grow in response to the emergent needs that we were seeing.
And the issue is that you cannot pay them with the amount of appropriation that has been given to you thus far.
That's correct.
Okay. So there is a $12 billion hole. Is that accurate?
$12 billion in 2025. Yeah, but that includes resources that we're spending in 24 that we didn't think we would need to.
Right. So an increase in employment, an increase in need from veterans that, thankfully, with the leadership of the community and Congress and the President, has enacted the PACT Act to broaden healthcare services for our military heroes. But the funding is not there, so it is unsustainable at this point. You need that $12 billion.
That is our estimate as of this time.
Well, I would argue that Buffalo, New York, that VA hospital that helped save my father's life 40 years ago, is a shining example of the need for more resources. The nurses just recently were out on the picket line calling for more resources. They are saying that there's what amounts to a hiring freeze, even though you just said there isn't a hiring freeze, because it takes 9 months to onboard an individual because the funding isn't there. And so I just want to make the point, and maybe you can elaborate on it, that the promise of America to our veterans to don the uniform is not being kept if the funds are not being put in place in order to provide for the care that they're depending on.
I would say that the reason we came forward with the shortfall was because we did not want to be in a situation where we did not have adequate resources to continue to meet that promise to our veterans across our system.
We have work to do. Thank you.